Level up your LA Kings experience with the new Vivid Seats Elite Seats. All the on-ice Kings action with even more exclusive access. Enjoy great seats to the game along with premier dining inside the Lexus Club with all-you-can-eat food and non-alcoholic beverages. Plus, get a free Team LA Kings item and parking with your purchase. Score your Vivid Seats Elite Seats tickets today and earn rewards on each purchase from the only ticket company that rewards you for buying. Experience it live with Vivid Seats, the official partner of the LA Kings.
You're listening to an LA Kings podcast. For more episodes of this and every other Kings program, visit lakings.com/podcast.
Spence lifts it down the middle, foot race, in comes Lee, Andre Lee scores! His first NHL goal! Andre Lee makes it 1-0.
You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings.
Turcotte speeds after it. In comes Turcotte. Right circle, cuts to the middle, then centers. Score!
Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
All right, it's Monday. That means it's time to crown a King of the Week. Joining me to do it, Zach Dooley. How are you doing today, Zach?
Jesse, I was beginning to think that I was maybe banned from the program. I haven't been on for King of the Week this season.
It's been a rough year for me personally. I don't want to get into it, but I've been in a ton of pain, so apologies to anybody who's ever missed an episode. Before we get into King of the Week, I want to lay out the structure of this week's episodes. I want to start kind of general, then King of the Week, and then I want to focus in real tightly on one play. So generally speaking, you and I don't think we've talked a lot this season behind the scenes personally about like how good we think the team will be. I feel like we did a lot last year. This year we both have just had a lot on our plates and the road schedule has kept you gone for a long time. So there just hasn't been a lot of like behind the scenes talk. The place where I'm at now, we're recording this on January 5th. I don't necessarily understand how the team is as good as they are, but they are clearly one of the better teams in the National Hockey League. And I have simply stopped questioning it or trying to figure out how they're doing it. They're just doing it.
I mean, we laid out so many different questions at the beginning of the year, right? And They didn't have answers. And we said, like, if a lot of those questions were answered positively, team could be really good.
Yeah.
But there were more questions than usual. And I think we all maybe underestimated just how many things changed at the same time at the beginning of the year, right? Like new personnel, they had a new structure, they had a new first-time head coach, a new training camp, new philosophies, a new power play, a new penalty kill, all at once. And I think that was why we saw this roller coaster start. And it was like you could see these things working, but then the next game they would fall completely off. And it was like this up and down thing and no consistency. It feels like those one by one have stopped being an issue. Each of these things are being like more and more comfortable. And a lot of those questions that we had have either been answered positively or something else has supplanted it. And I don't know, like at the end of the day with this team, like I think we truly won't know until what will hopefully be the playoffs, right? Like at the end of the day, that's what will judge the success of this team. But we're seeing them play in a way over an extended stretch that for me, I don't think we've really seen since the team came out of the rebuild. I don't know if you could think of a time when maybe they were better, but this seems to be like the best month of hockey we've seen from the Kings in years.
Yeah. To me, it comes back to the consistency conversation that was taking place in October and early November. And if I'm watching a TV show and it's sort of inconsistent early days, generally speaking, I don't feel like the show turns into something incredible. It can happen. It's a weird analogy, but if anybody's ever watched Community or Parks and Rec, early days, inconsistent. Rec, and then
The Office too.
It figures itself out. If I'm listening to a group, a musical act, and they're sort of inconsistent in their offerings, it's rare that they turn it around and become something incredible, right? Usually incredible things you can kind of peg off the hop and go, oh, that's incredible. So I don't want to crown the team too early. Obviously there's still plenty, it's still more than half a season at the time of this recording. But yeah, the loss of Matt Roy, sudden loss of Drew Doughty, all the changes, like you mentioned, different goaltending, different neutral zone, different power play, penalty kill, coaching staff, all of it. when the inconsistency hit, my natural inclination was to think, gosh, that's a lot of things to have to sort out. Like I said, I think I do know the answer. The simplest answer is they play defense like a beast, right? They suppress
Yeah,
shots
and
and they
like
don't allow
every
goals.
dude is like so committed to
Yeah.
playing defense, and it isn't impacting really anybody's offensive numbers.
No, and I mean that's the simple answer, right? They defend in a league where not many other teams are that committed top to bottom. And, you roll those dice, and more often than not, you're going to come out on top. But, I've said it time and time again, when I'm watching the games, Tampa's a bad example of the game that was just played on Saturday, because
Right.
even Jim Miller said it afterwards. This is not their finest performance, but whatever. But, against New Jersey, for example, they shut them out. I don't know. It didn't look like smothering defense to me when I was watching it, but at the end of every game, it is. And they're allowing, basically 2.5 goals per game. And as you said, it's not hurting anybody's offensive numbers. And they wind up winning at this point far more often than they lose. It's also a lot more fun than it has been, which is nice, right? Like my biggest complaint last year during the slump was not that they were losing games, but that it was just boring. There hasn't been a boring game in a while in this season. I'm not going to say there haven't been any boring games, but there hasn't been one in quite a while.
There were earlier in the year for sure, but
Yeah.
over this run, like since the San Jose loss, which, obviously that was it was a turning point moment, right? And you didn't know which way it was going to turn. And since that game, it's turned for the better. There hasn't been too many buttons that were pushed incorrectly since that game. Most decisions made by, Jim Hiller and the coaching staff have been good. Most players, most nights have been good. And I just think about this quote that Jim Hiller gave maybe a week or so ago, where he said he was asked about the consistency, and he said that maybe earlier in the year he's seen this a lot, where some nights you have 6 or 7 guys going, and you're trying to rely on those 6 or 7 guys to carry the other 12. This team has 14 or 15 guys going, and when they have that, they are picking up the 3 or 4 who aren't. And it's a lot easier to play that way, right? Like not everyone's going to be on every single night, but right now they have at least 2 lines going every night, or maybe there's only one that's off, or maybe 4 or 5 of their D are going and there's one guy who isn't there. And it's like when you have that as opposed to the inverse, you can make up for guys who are having a bad night, because those guys are going to be back the next game, and they generally have that. It's just, I don't know, like consistency, you can't practice it, you can't teach it, you can't work on it. You just have to learn to be it. And over the last 15, now 16 games, the Kings have found they've learned how to be consistent. And I don't know really how to explain it.
Yeah, I want to go back to November real quick, because first game of November is that 4-3 shootout loss to Chicago, but is then followed by unbelievable wins against Nashville and Minnesota on the road. And I mean, I think that was a conversation you and I had, right? I came to practice after that short road trip and I was like, okay, I'm sold. This is great. They figured it out, whatever. Then they lose to Vancouver. They beat Columbus in a game that was like, okay, yes, they beat them, but Columbus not very good. They lose to Calgary, lose to Colorado. And I want to say that's the game where they had like no shots on goal in the second period.
They played really, really well in the first and then had no shots in the second. And, didn't offer much in the third.
And the Calgary loss, as I recall, was oft criticized by the organization. Then they beat Detroit. Detroit, again, not a terrific team. Shutout against Buffalo. Fans are booing. 2-1 win over Seattle, which is like good for 2 points, but come on now, it's Seattle. And then they lose to the Sharks 7-2. And at the end of that run, you're like, all right, well, who is this team? We see these incredible wins, but then we see these embarrassing performances. And then after that 7-2 loss to the Sharks, yeah, they haven't won every game, but I've never once in that, in all of December, now we're into January, there was never a loss where I was like, oh, I was embarrassed or disappointed or upset.
There just weren't that many losses, right?
Yeah, but okay, they lose to Washington on the 7th game of a 7-game road trip.
Yeah, and they played really well. Like,
what are you going to do? They're scheduled losses. So I don't know, like you said, I don't know if it was that loss to San Jose. I don't know if it was combined with the loss to Buffalo, if it was just a month of, but it could just be as simple as it takes time to figure things out. Like and
That's
they
kind of
figured it out.
what I kind of think it is, right? Like
Yeah,
there were like a lot of things different at the start of the season. The Doughty being unexpected, and it
yeah,
was like we said it right. The only consistency on this team was supposed to be Anderson Doughty. Then you
right.
lose that, so it was like every single thing was new, and it did take some time for sure to figure it out. But now it's like not every performance has been exemplary, but like the three worst games that they've played since the Sharks game, in my opinion, have all been wins. Like they found a way to beat the Ducks, they found a way to beat the Stars, and they found a way to beat the Lightning.
Yeah,
The Lightning and Stars very good teams, so you're not going to be at your best every game. But like the Kings, by everyone's admission, didn't play that well against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay was the better team in that game, but good teams win those games.
mm-hmm.
And I don't think the Kings win that game last year. I don't think they lose it by one. I think they lose it by multiple goals. This year's team just finds a way to win that game against a good team. And it's just like it's a big stride, I think, for this team.
Apologies to whoever wrote this on Twitter. I didn't remember who said it, but I saw somebody say the Tampa Bay game was a 5-2 loss that the Kings won 2-1.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty like, yeah, Tampa probably should have won that game, but they didn't, which is not nothing. Let's use that as a catapult into King of the Week, because there's only 2 games this week, is New Jersey and Tampa. So we'll start with you, your honorable mention for King of the Week.
I'm going to go with Trevor Lewis. Just played the one game, but it was a very important game for Trevor Lewis, his 1,000th game, as a professional. And it was just clear that the people around him, like this meant maybe just a little bit more than it did when other guys have hit 1,000. Like Trevor Lewis has 14 career goals. His career high in goals is 14. Never scored 30 points in a year. He's not a fighter. He's not like a bruising hitter. He's just a consistently solid player. He's an excellent teammate. He's constantly lauded for the work he does off the ice. And someone posed the question post game, like, you don't usually see that kind of player hit 1,000 because he doesn't have that one like standout part of his game that's kept him in the league. He just knows the job that he has to earn is a job that not a lot of people want, and he has earned all 1,000 of those games. And it was just cool to see a guy like that, who means a lot to a lot of people here, be the center of attention for one day when he's rarely in the spotlight.
I think everything you said was perfectly summed up. I don't know if you saw it or not. You were calling the game with Josh. They cut to a shot in the crowd of Jeff Carter, Dustin Brown, Jake Muzzin, and Nate Thompson. I think that was it, in a suite.
Teddy Purcell too.
Oh, Teddy Purcell. Clearly at the game to celebrate Trevor Lewis's 1,000th game. And they had the 6-1K t-shirt. And I'd have thought that Trevor Lewis was Jeff Carter's only child, for how big his smile was and how hard he was tapping the shirt. And clearly it meant a lot to those guys. And if you can drag a bunch of teammates, like Nate Thompson didn't win the cup with these teams. Teddy Purcell didn't win the cup with these teams. Yes, Dustin Brown and Jake Muzzin and Jeff Carter all won the cup together. But yeah, he obviously means a ton to his former teammates, to his coaches, his former coaches. I've sort of told this story. We were at the 2014. They sent a small production crew, me and Chris and Tyler, to record all the interviews for the guys that won the cup in 2014. We went, and there was one player, I won't say who. We had these golf carts that we used to transport the players from the place where they were having dinner and having the celebration together. We transport them to the hotel room where we were set up to film. And I'm taking this player, and he knows exactly what we're doing. It's been explained to him. He's agreed to do it. We're walking from the golf cart to the front door of the hotel room. And he says, "Remind me again what we're doing." And I say, "Well, we're going to just ask you a couple questions about 2014 and the cup run." And he goes, "Yeah, I don't want to do it. I don't want to talk about myself. I don't want to talk about, this is not about me. I'll talk about the team, but I'm not going to talk about myself." And I said, "Okay, well, can we at least get you to sit down and record something for Trevor Lewis's 1,000th game?" And when I said that, he was like, "Yeah, absolutely, no problem." And then once we had him in the chair, I begged him to answer a couple questions about himself. But that's what Trevor Lewis has meant to his teammates and to the franchise. And I imagine every franchise he's played for, because it's not just the Kings.
You remember when Drew Doughty had his 1,000th game and Louis did that video with Matthew Tkachuk where he popped
No,
in?
I don't
You never
remember
seen
that
this?
story.
It's hilarious.
I don't think
But
I
like
have.
only Trevor Lewis could get away with doing that, knowing that, Drew and Tkachuk don't obviously see eye to
Right.
eye, but he
That's
was with
funny.
the Flames at the time and he was doing his video and he scripted it for Tkachuk to walk in as Louis was doing his tribute to Drew Doughty. And it was just funny. And it was like,
Yeah.
that's like Trevor Lewis can get away with that
Yeah.
because he just like of what he means to Drew. And clearly just, he doesn't, the things that he does are always, they're never valued by the people watching the games, right?
Yeah.
How many I get every time he's in the lineup, I get 10 tweets asking, why is this guy still playing? And it's just so clear that the things that he does are valued so highly by the players and the coaches in the room that they think that he makes the team better and they value him so much as a part of the group. And I don't know, it's just nice to see a guy like that get his due.
This is not about Trevor Lewis, but this is just about what I said earlier about him done questioning it. I can't remember the name of the principle, but there's some idea that basically says, let's say I give you a meal that's 90% good and 10% bad. It's 90% good.
Yeah.
If you focus on the 10%, at some point that is on you. And that's sort of how I feel about the team this year. It's like, yeah, okay, there'd be things I would do differently, or there's things I don't understand, or coaches, you go like, oh, why did you play Kemper against Nashville and Riddick against Washington instead of vice versa? But at the end of the day, who cares? They're like the fourth best team in the league, and they have the best record since November 27th. Well, why? This is not going to question the 13th forward anyway, or 11th forward in the lineup.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, my honorable mention. I'm just following my own rules. It's Andre Lee. If you score your first NHL goal, you get an honorable mention. And I think you and I did talk about this. As far as first goals go, you're not going to get much better than Andre Lee's, right? It didn't bounce off of somebody's arm or trickle in or, total fluke. Like, that was an all hustle, all skill play by Andre Lee, and it was pretty and it was important in the game too. So it was a nice play.
It's very rare that you get a first career goal that's better in real life than you might like think of it in your head when you're like a little kid on the street playing hockey, right? Like that was as good a first goal as I could recall. I'd seen a bunch. I don't remember every single one, but that was silky smooth. So good for him. He's another guy who he's earned his keep, earned what he gets.
And it's a bummer, unfortunately, that the timing of everybody coming back means that he's already in Ontario. But I asked Jordan Spence if he knew that Andre Lee was there and intended for the play to go that way, or if he was just kind of clearing the puck. And he kind of sheepishly said, like, kind of both. Like, priority one was getting the puck out of danger. But yes, I knew that Andre Lee was down there. Did I know he was going to do that? No, but, hopefully something would happen. So good on Jordan Spence for being honest about that pass too. All right, your runner up then.
I'm going to go with Mikey Anderson. I think he had 3 points from 2 games played, but he could have had none, and I still probably would have worked him in because Jim Hiller said after the Lightning game, he pretty much said we had 17 guys who played poorly, and then we had Mikey Anderson, who despite that played elite hockey. He played 11 minutes and 22 seconds in the third period of that game. That's 34-minute pace. Joel Edmondson went down early. Someone had to step up and fill those minutes, and it was a tight 1-1 game. You don't want to stretch your bottom guys when those points are on the line. It has to be your top guys, and it was Mikey Anderson, as he's done all year, stepping up and just being an elite defensive hockey player. And he had two assists and a goal, and the goal was a very big one, against the Lightning in a 1-goal win. So outstanding, for Mikey Anderson. We always knew he was good, and now he's showing that he is great. And it's just been really, really cool to see him take multiple steps forward this year.
I also went with Mikey Anderson. And if this was a week where there were 4 games and there were a bunch of goals scored against, and you could look up Mikey Anderson and say, oh, listen, he was he had the lowest goals against while he was on the ice, while blah, blah. he was on the ice for the only goal scored against the Kings. So it's a little bit weird in 2 games.
Yeah, and he scored it.
Yes, exactly. But that's exactly the point. It's like, yeah, it was basically 2 shutouts as far as I'm concerned.
Is that a 1-goal shutout or no? Because
100%,
it was a 2-1 game.
No, 100% it was.
Okay.
But yeah, Mikey Anderson played 51 minutes and 43 seconds at even strength, at all strengths in the 2 games. And yeah, like he's, one of the bigger questions that I didn't know that we'd ever get answered is Mikey Anderson, is he a top pair defenseman or is he Drew Doughty's top pair defenseman? And I think we can say pretty definitively after this season that he's a top pair defenseman. And I mean, he's just been really, I don't want to say surprising because it's not like a shock, but it's kind of surprising. Like I would not have thought that Anderson and Gavrikov would have combined to be a shutdown D pair. So
certainly wouldn't have had that on any preseason predictions. And
yeah,
you knew both of them were good as players, but if they didn't take the steps that they did, like where would the team be, right? Like they have
in trouble.
Yeah, they have been outstanding.
It's so funny that, I thought these conversations would wait. I figured fans would start having the conversation, and, I've been talking to people about it, and, you talk about it behind the scenes. I'm surprised that the conversations have begun publicly so early. I guess I was surprised that Dennis brought it up to Jim Hiller in a post game, and I'm surprised that Jim Hiller sort of addressed it. But now the conversation is already, it's out there, and it's like, well, what do you do when Drew Doughty comes back?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a silly conversation. He's a Norris Trophy winning defenseman, but that's how good they've been. So
he's certainly coming into the lineup, but I mean,
yeah,
it's a conversation when the time comes of like, where does he play? Right. And we'll get into that at some point, but that you only have that conversation if those 2 dudes have been at a just elite level, and that's where they've been.
Yeah. Otherwise it's not a conversation, it's just,
you just put him back with Mike
Anderson and Doughty, reunite your top pair. But yeah, now you're like, well, shoot, top pair is playing really well. Second pair is playing pretty well. Third pair is anyway, it's nuts. All right. So we both have the same runner up. I'm assuming then that we both have the same king of the week. Who is your king of the week?
I mean, it's Darcy Kemper, and I would have to believe that would be yours as well. He was the best player in one game, and the other game was a shutout. So by far the king of the week, right? I don't think there's any debating that, and not even that much to say.
I entered in my numbers into my super scientific and always correct king of the week calculations before knowing who was going to join me for this episode, and I just put 9 for Kemper. I was like, there's no chance that whoever I speak to doesn't have Darcy Kemper.
If you watched the games, it was Darcy Kemper.
Yeah, he is the biggest. I'm going to use the word surprise, but I don't mean it. I don't mean for it to sound negative. But as far as all the question marks we had, what's goaltending going to be, to me was one of the biggest because, and I'm not sure how I feel about it anymore, but my attitude was, listen, Cam Talbot came in last year and was great. He was an all-star and he was playing for a $1 million contract and a $1 million bonus. And you're just not going to get 500% or whatever when you factor in the bonus. But, Kemper's price tag is just a lot higher. It's just be really difficult to improve on the performance based on what it's going to cost you. It's sort of the same thing with Drew Doughty coming back on the team defense. It's like team's defense is incredible. Adding Drew Doughty to that is not going to multiply the effectiveness of the defense by 150%. They're not going to drop down to only allowing 1 goal per game. Like, this is not going to happen. But having said that, I think Darcy Kemper, whether it's his personality in the locker room, which I confess I don't necessarily know, goaltending has not been an issue this season, and he's been, even though, and this is that 90-10 thing, there have been moments in games the Kings won where I was like, oh gosh, well, I'm not sure that was a big rebound. Oh, I don't know if he played that right. Oh, I don't know if I like the way he handled the puck. And then at the end of the game, it's like, all right, well, he allowed 1 goal. So who cares?
Yeah. And like, here we are, and Darcy Kemper is in the top 5 in the NHL in save percentage and the top 5 in the NHL in goals against average. And like, what more could you want, right? Like, it was an unknown because, last year wasn't a good year for him. the 5 before it were very good. And it was like, okay, is last year the start of a regression, or is last year just an outlier on a pretty consistent goaltender? I mean, I think it's pretty clear that it's an outlier, right? Like,
Yeah.
he's been close to as good as any goalie in the league. And I don't know, you wonder if Team Canada's like, hey, maybe we should have slapped this guy on the roster with how well he's playing right now going into the Four Nations.
You know, I'm fond of saying that in any given year, there are only between 3 and 8 goaltenders that actually matter, and everybody else is just a guy. And at any given point, you know that, like, Igor Shesterkin is going to matter. You know, he might not matter so much that he can pull his team out of the season they're having, but you know he's a good goaltender. But then there are seasons where Jocelyn Thibault or Jake Allen or who was the goaltender for the Carolina Hurricanes in 06, was it, when they won? Cam Ward, right? Where they have 1 year, Jim Carrey for the Capitals, for those fans old enough to remember. Every now and then there's a couple guys that sprout, you know, that just have like an incredible season. And you're like, oh my God, that guy's amazing. And then they sort of fall back into guy status. Kemper's been good for most of his career. And so, yeah, like you said, I think that last year could probably be just, that could be the, I'm blanking on the word, the
outlier,
yeah,
the
exactly.
aberration, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like he's been really good.
Been really good.
All right, so that's it. So congratulations, Darcy Kemper, this week's King of the Week. Ever wonder what top athletes eat to perform at their best? Superfood Direct, the preferred catering partner of the LA Kings, is here to fuel your game. For athletes, nutrition isn't just fuel, it's the key to peak performance. Superfood Direct delivers chef-prepared meals that help you build strength, boost endurance, and recover faster. With over 11 years of experience, every meal is balanced with the perfect mix of proteins, carbs, and healthy fats to power you on and off the ice. Ready to fuel your greatness? Visit superfd.com/direct and get 20% off your first order with promo code LA20. That's LA20. The specifics that I want to get into, and I'm debating whether or not to make this a regular part of the King of the Week. I think we might. Mainly because I don't think we can go without talking about Alex Turcotte's assist on Adrian Kempe's goal.
Play of the week.
Yeah, first of all, just an incredible play. But it also reminded me of something Jim Hiller said to us, I think Friday after practice. And he was talking about plays. I don't know if he used the phrase 50-50 play, or maybe that's what I heard. But he was talking about, you know, there's plays where a guy maybe doesn't go the extra step, right? And you don't always necessarily catch it, right? Like a guy could dump the puck or go for a line change or whatever. And this is sort of what I think they were talking about in the offseason when they talked about uncomfortable. Alex Turcotte didn't have to chase down the puck, right? He could have just as easily gone for a line change or shrugged and stayed in a safe position. Once he got the puck, gained the blue line, handled it into coverage, and realized there wasn't a play for him, he could have dumped it in, he could have turned it over. But to be so present in the play and committed to keeping it moving forward, that he saw Adrian Kempe, who just came off the bench. It's not like Kempe was on the ice with him. You know, they've practiced that play or whatever. Like, Adrian Kempe just hopped off. And that's another thing. Adrian Kempe didn't have to come barreling down into the zone. And Turcotte makes that just simple little bump pass. And of course, Kempe catches Vasilevsky totally off guard. It's probably 3 or 4 moments between two players that didn't have to happen, that if they hadn't happened, nobody would like throw their hands up and go, you know, bums, or, oh, how could you not do, or whatever. But because they each made the moment committed to the play, it turned into the game-winning goal.
And honestly, like, I don't think Alex Turcotte would have had the self-belief to make that play, maybe even the start of this year, but certainly not any time in the past, right? Like, to use the speed to get there is one thing, but to drive into the slot 1-on-2, avoid physical contact, and while falling, have the awareness and the belief to make that touch pass to Kempe was, it was obviously important, right? It was the most important play the Kings made in the game, but it was something that we definitely hadn't always seen from that player specifically. And I thought that was so great that he did what he did.
And, you know, you mentioned earlier, you know, good teams win games like that, right? They find ways to win. And I think that's, it's moments like that. It's what Jim Hiller was talking about that makes a team good. One of the things that I used to love about Tanner Pearson was that, and I'm not delusional. Tanner Pearson isn't Wayne Gretzky, right? He's obviously a very fine hockey player, but he's not like, he's probably not Hall of Fame. He's probably not getting a jersey retirement or a statue or anything. But when he was on the ice, he would never let a play die. And so, when Toffoli or Carter were maybe 1 foot towards the bench or whatever, and Tanner Pearson goes barreling into the corner, well, then you have to go and support your teammate. Adrian Kempe didn't have to go follow Turcotte into the zone, but if he doesn't, I don't know. Like, I don't think necessarily fans would be on him, but do his teammates notice? Does Turcotte go back to the bench and wonder why nobody was there to support him? But, I don't think it was a conscious thought on Kempe's part. I think he just did it. And I assume that Turcotte couldn't have been thinking too clearly in that moment. He just did it. He saw the opportunity and he just did it. It's moments like that make being a fan really fun. Those sort of out of nowhere, unscripted, but totally cool moments.
Like that game goes to overtime last year. They needed someone to step up,
or they lose in the last 90 seconds.
Lose, or it's not even 1-1 at that moment. It's probably not 1-1 in that moment, but like they're just finding ways to win games in every capacity. It's just like somebody had to make a play in that game. Like I don't think the Kings played all that well against the Flyers either, but it was Kopitar, right? Kopitar steps up, gets 2 big goals. Kings played very well against the Devils. A number of guys played well, but then in the Lightning game, they needed somebody to make that game-breaking play to get the goal they needed, and it was Turcotte. And like, it's awesome. That's why he's in that spot, and it's why he's earned the elevated role that he has.
And this is how you know that it's not. I'm trying not to be too optimistic, but this is how it suggests to me that it's not fake. And that we're not, just sort of waiting for the other shoe to drop. In the New Jersey game, they challenged a goal.
Yeah.
A goal that I thought was a goal. Jim Hiller thought it was a goal, right? He spoke to the media after the game and he said, I wouldn't have challenged that. But Samson Lee knew it wasn't. And so that's, when you get those sort of moments coming from your video review coach, it's everybody. It's not just the players on the ice. It's everybody. So, listen, the team isn't going to have the best record probably forever. But for now, it's been a lot of fun. And like I said, I expect they'll lose a game. Obviously they'll lose a game eventually. And they'll probably go on a losing streak at some point, 3-4 games, whatever it is. But this feels like a totally different team to me from last year. And yes, there's a bunch of 10 new players on the roster and new coach and all that. So there's a million reasons for that statement to not be that insightful, but it feels different. It's a lot more fun this year.
There will be a dip, right? Jim Hiller said it the other day. Like at some point, some of these things will start to go the other way, and it just feels like they're better equipped to recover from it, though. Like it doesn't feel like it's gonna spiral. And you can't take away the points that are in the bank right now, and the Kings are one of not that many teams to have more than 50 of them. So it's nice to see the results matching the play. And I don't know, you're right. It's been fun to take in these games. Whereas last year, even in games they were winning, it wasn't fun always to watch. It is right now.
Yeah. All right. That's going to wrap it up. Zach, thank you very much for joining me. And I will see you back at the rink. Kings fans, thanks for listening.